The last video I posted was a clip from one of Deadmau5's streams where he talked about being rich, money, in one huge aspect at the end of the video, and that was accounting. And I wanted to post this video as most of my subscribers know. I've been posting a lot of Deadmau5's like mini clips. I spend hours almost like digging through gold, so to speak, where it's like I watch a couple hours of his streams and there's one little like nugget or clip that I'm like, okay, this is actually super important and of course super relevant for all my musicians on this channel. And in case you didn't know, I'm a former accountant, right? And I want to stress, I might as well say this as well, especially for this video, I'm a former accountant, but I'm not your accountant. And this is a big thing he did talk about in that video. He was kind of like talking about obviously like tax accounting and make sure you hire a good accountant. Sometimes it's tough to find one, et cetera, et cetera. And this is super important because it brings up actually a whole Pandora's box. This video could easily be hours long. I could even do an entire series because here's the big thing at the end of the day. If you are a musician, you are a business. Whether you look at yourself as a business entity or organization or whatever or not, you are a business. And I've always looked at this, especially with me being a former accountant and obviously, you know, doing music all my life, but kind of transitioning from accounting to DJing and electronic music. I always looked at myself, my DJ name being Frachero. I always looked at Frachero, so to speak, as the business and my product being my music, my performances, merch, you know, basically all the stuff under the Frachero kind of business. And going along with that, if you are a musician and your goal is to be making money, which let's be honest, for most musicians, I think the first step of making it, so to speak, is to live off that money you make as a musician. To say, wow, you know, regardless of what genre of music you make, to say, you know, I wake up, I make music, I go to bed. I wake up, I perform out live, and then I go to bed, right? In the sense that all you do is your music and you can completely live off your music income. If you're in that position, you have to inevitably go into accounting and understand taxes, especially. You know, of course, you know, Benjamin Franklin said the only two things in life that are certain are death and taxes. And regardless of the industry you're in, whether you're a musician or not, you do have to deal with accounting in general. We all have to pay our taxes. This is why, you know, I've done videos, for example, about DistroKid, which is the main independent music distributor I use. That, of course, you have to fill out a tax form and submit the amount of money that you make on DistroKid to the IRS because you made money. And, of course, you now have to pay taxes on that income. But a big thing, especially for musicians, once you transition into, like, say, being full-time, because obviously, if, like, say, you're doing music part-time, and I'm just making numbers up, right? And like say in a given year, you only made $500, you only made $1,000. Well, that is a little bit different, right? However, if like say you're getting into the full-time region where now you're making 20K or let's say 30K a year and upwards from performances, from your merch, from streams, from downloads, you're now at the position where you're making so much money that of course you're probably gonna live off it. And all that income that's now coming into your wallet and into your pocket, of course, not only is taxed, but there's a whole other accounting realm. I did do a video about tax accounting for musicians. I've a link listed below to it in the description. I highly suggest watching it because here's the big thing at the end of the day. I know on that video, I did get some comments of people saying like, why do I care about this video, right? Like what's the relevance of me talking about accounting? If you are a musician and you want to take your music seriously, one, whether it's good or bad, fortunate or unfortunate, one inevitability of becoming a full-time musician, this is true for pretty much any entrepreneur or somebody who's kind of pursuing something that they're making on their own, is you have to be knowledgeable in accounting. Almost every, I'd say like successful entrepreneur, musician, even actor, painter, like pretty much anybody, like I said, that's kind of doing an independent type thing, almost every single one of them, when I've talked to them going out and about through my travels and through my experiences, at least has some knowledge, even if it's very surface level, they have some knowledge about accounting or investing or taxes because it's a huge subsect or huge side effect, again, good or bad, of pursuing what you love, that once you get into that full-time region, and like I said, I think for most people, I've never done a video about this, maybe I will, where it's like, I feel like making it is very vague, right? But I find for some people or most people, there's multiple levels of what you consider making it to be. And I think for most people, the first level, the first kind of barrier of making it, like I said earlier, is to live off that income. And at first, that's great because you're like, oh my God, I'm making 30K a year. It's not obviously an insane amount, but the fact that I can make 30K and maybe I have to pinch pennies here and there and be a little bit more frugal, but the fact that I can wake up, do what I love, and then go to bed, that's huge. And for a lot of people, that's their first level of making it. But one huge thing, or one huge potentially negative effect of that, depending on how you look at it, is now you have to worry way more about taxes. You now have to worry about write-offs, keeping track of all your receipts. If you drive to and from a gig, those miles you can write off. You now have to hire a tax accountant. It's not just going on TurboTax and you have a W-2, for example, and you work a 9-to-5 job where the numbers are very simple and usually very easy. Now you have a whole other situation, like I said, of keeping track of certain items. Of course, the money that you make typically as a musician is not taxed until the end of tax time. And what I mean by that is if you make, let's say, $100 on DistroKid from whatever, that money that you get in your bank account has not had the taxes taken out yet. So for most people, most typical working people, you pay taxes. So that way when tax time rolls around, because you've been paying taxes kind of through each paycheck, you usually get money back. Most people are used to that. Once you transition into being, like, say, a full-time musician, full-time whatever, like, say, anything in the entrepreneurial route, during tax time, you don't get money back, you owe money. And if this is something you're not used to, if, let's say, you're not used to the IRS going to you saying, hey, just letting you know, and I'm making numbers up, you made $40K last year on your music from performances, from streams and downloads, from merch, from whatever else, right? You made $40K, you have to give us $3 or $4K, and you're like, wait, I owe money? That's a whole other thing to get into. And of course, I think going along with this, finding a very reliable tax accountant is important. Deadmau5 talked about this. You hear this all the time in the media from different musicians or notable figures, celebrities, of them hiring the wrong tax person and one thing leads into another, and it's really, really bad. And so my best suggestion, I could do more videos about this if people want me to, because I've done, like I say, I think like a couple about tax accounting and stuff like that. But this is a big thing to keep in mind that, like, say, if you are going to be taking music seriously and your goal is to be a full-time musician, which I feel like for most people on this channel watching these videos and most people in general, that is their goal, avoiding accounting and kind of looking at it as kind of like a random thing is the worst position to go down, right? Even Deadmau5, I've seen, he does have a good amount of business knowledge and legal knowledge. Even when he was doing his stuff through like his cube projects, right? He's kind of visual type setup, for lack of better phrase. I'll probably word that more specifically, but for his entire stage setup, he had to understand programming. He knows programming really well. So when he works with people, yeah, maybe he's not like a full-on, blown expert compared to the other people he hires, but he knows enough about programming to understand where they're going for, what they're going for, where's, their head at, and the overall landscape of what they're pursuing. And likewise with accounting, of course, you don't have to be an accountant. Like for me, I did get my degree as an accountant, but you don't have to be a full-on accountant, getting your CPA, working at the Big Four, all this kind of stuff, and blah, blah, blah. But I do suggest, and there's a lot of like I think called MOOCs, multi-open online courses that are completely free. I do suggest maybe take an intro to an accounting course. Maybe even just watch a couple YouTube videos about tax accounting 101. I promise you, it is something that when I say this to a lot of musicians, they're like, oh, no, I'll hire somebody else. And yes, of course you should. Even for me, being a former accountant, I still hire a tax accountant. I still want somebody who lives, eats, and breathes only taxes. However, I have enough experience with tax accounting to do a good amount of my taxes on my own to make sure things are properly prepared and kind of set up before I give him all my information. But in addition to, I know enough to understand, okay, is this a reputable person? I used to have another tax accountant who I actually got rid of because through my experience and through my knowledge, I realized, what? They're actually not a good tax accountant. They're not doing things, I think, the way they should be doing them. I'm gonna hire somebody else, and I'm really, really glad I did, right? And that came from my own knowledge. So I suggest to a lot of musicians out there, and I know that most people who are musicians are going on YouTube to look at Ableton tutorials, music theory tutorials, sound design tutorials, how to mix and master, getting music out there. But a huge thing that a lot of musicians don't watch is videos about accounting and taxes. And I know it's not the sexiest or most glamorous or maybe fun, for lack of a better word, videos to watch, but I'm telling you, getting into accounting and understanding accounting and taxes and all this kind of stuff is absolutely vital if you want to be a full-time musician.